Hello, aspiring hunters. Welcome to the Hunter Experience. When we think of Hunter x Hunter, it's impossible not to remember the energy this work brought to the world of anime and manga. With a narrative that has always been rich and engaging, Hunter x Hunter gained a legion of fans around the world, not only for its innovative plot, but also for its complex characters and the way the author Yoshihiro Togashi was able to create a unique world. However, when we think of the anime, the question arises, why don't we have more Hunter x Hunter anime? How did something so big and beloved end up stopping at such a, let's say, incomplete point? If you're prepared for the incredible Hunter journey, click like and subscribe to the channel to join our troop. Don't forget to comment on who your favorite character is in Hunter x Hunter. Now, let's continue with this incredible story. The issue is that the story of Hunter x Hunter's anime isn't just a matter of popularity or lack of interest. On the contrary, I would say it's a combination of several factors, ranging from personal issues of the author to decisions from the industry and even the pace of the story itself. Let's dive into this puzzle because I think the reasons for the lack of a new Hunter x Hunter anime are much more complex than they seem at first glance. First, perhaps the most obvious factor and also the hardest to ignore is Yoshihiro Togashi's health. We know that he has been struggling with serious health problems since the beginning of his career, which has directly affected his production. It's no secret that he has been battling back problems, which makes working on the manga very difficult. He has mentioned in interviews that the pain episodes are so intense that he can no longer work as he did before, which results in the frequent pauses in the manga's publication. And when you think about it, it's clear that the production of an anime, which requires a much more intense and constant rhythm, becomes a much more complicated task to carry out. If we look at the timeline of Hunter x Hunter, the anime had two major adaptations. The first from 1999 to 2001, and the second from 2011 to 2014, which covered almost the entire story of the manga up to the Chimera Ant arc. After that, the anime stopped, and since then, there has been no significant move to continue. And here comes an interesting question because it's a bit hard to understand whether this is a studio choice or if it's really a consequence of the manga's pace and Togashi's health. The manga, for example, has stopped several times, and there have been long periods without new publications, which generates an expectation that the anime would be affected in that sense. I think one of the reasons for the lack of continuity in the anime is precisely the fact that the manga is still far from being finished. Hunter x Hunter is in the middle of one of the most complex and longest arcs in its history, the Dark Continent Expedition arc. Even when the 2011 anime ended, the adaptation still couldn't cover the entire story up to the current point of the manga. If you think about it, it doesn't make much sense to create a new season of the anime when the source material is still ongoing. The work is at a point where new developments and twists could happen at any moment, and a new anime could risk following a very different path or even straying too far from what is happening in the manga. After all, Togashi's work has always had a narrative structure that would be hard to adapt well without some risks. Not to mention that for an anime to reach the point where the manga stopped, it would require a huge investment, especially considering that Hunter x Hunter fans have very high expectations for each new episode, and the studio would have to ensure it was worth it. A more technical issue, but one that also comes into play, is the popularity and preferences of the anime industry. We know that the anime market is extremely competitive, and new works are always emerging and gaining attention. What happens is that, although Hunter x Hunter is a long-time success, the endless pauses in the manga, combined with the long time without relevant updates in the anime's production, have somewhat cooled the atmosphere around the series. This directly impacts the decision of studios and producers. When a work like Hunter x Hunter is stagnant for so long, the urgency to produce more episodes decreases because the audience starts to disperse, and the market shifts its focus to other animes that are maintaining a more constant production. For producers, the risk of investing in a project that is still so unfinished is huge. They can't guarantee that the audience will stay as engaged throughout a new season, knowing there's a risk of not completing the adaptation as they imagine. I would say that the Dark Continent Expedition arc is another critical point. This arc was not fully adapted to the anime, and it's here that some of the biggest revelations and changes in the story take place. The thing is, the nature of this arc is extremely challenging. Togashi's complex ideas and the way he mixes elements of politics, exploration, and combat would create a huge challenge for animators. Moreover, the manga's own pace, which can often be much slower and more contemplative, may be hard to translate to the screen without losing its impact. For the anime to succeed, great care would be needed to not rush the story or lose the essence of the work, which could frustrate the most passionate fans. I think the studios know this, and therefore might have decided that without a more regular production and a clear pace to continue, the anime adaptation wouldn't be viable. Another point to consider is the impact of the work on the audience and the industry. When Hunter x Hunter went off the air in 2014, the series had just covered an arc that was one of the most intense in history. The Chimera Ant arc was an epic journey, full of philosophical and emotional conflicts that was very well received by both critics and the public. When the anime adaptation ended, many fans thought the anime wouldn't return. But what happened afterward was that the manga also began to have a more irregular production. This created a difficult cycle to break. The anime depends on consistent material, but the manga depends on Togashi being well and having time to work. I think this dynamic has been one of the biggest obstacles to the anime's return, as both anime and manga are stuck in this rhythm oscillation. And finally, there's the issue of Togashi's health. When he began working on Hunter x Hunter, the work was already at a frenetic pace, and the impact of creating such a dense and intricate story with so many characters and complex arcs seems to have severely affected his body. The fact that he needs to take long breaks to recover and work at a slower pace without overloading his health has made fans increasingly frustrated, but also understanding. The thing is, this situation has been going on for so long, and the time between chapter releases seems to drag, which puts the future of the anime at risk. When we look at the current state of Hunter x Hunter, it's impossible not to wonder if there is finally enough material for a complete adaptation, or if fans will be doomed to live with that "I want more" feeling for a long time. And the big question here is, do we have enough material for a continuation or even a remake? Or is Hunter x Hunter still at a point where the anime adaptation would have to be interrupted or even reconsidered? First, if we think in terms of available material, the answer seems obvious. Yes, there is enough content. The Hunter x Hunter manga hasn't stopped being published, even though it's been intermittent due to Togashi's health. Up to now, there are chapters and arcs that could be perfectly adapted into the anime. The question is whether this content is enough to keep the Hunter x Hunter anime going without a very long break, which is indeed a challenge. What I think makes the adaptation of Hunter x Hunter unique is that the manga, unlike many other anime, has such an engaging and twist-filled structure that the anime becomes a richer experience when it follows the pace of the original work. This puts pressure on the studios trying to adapt it because they know each new chapter can change the course of the story and provide new challenges for the characters. But on the other hand, it's this unpredictability that also makes the adaptation difficult because it's unclear how far the manga will advance or what the next arc will be like. This makes the idea of simply continuing where it left off a bit risky, given that the anime could end up being interrupted again at some point, which would make fans lose interest. One alternative to handle this would be a remake of the anime, but would that really be a good idea? The truth is, the 2011 production already did a great job faithfully adapting the first arcs of the manga and correcting flaws that the 1999 version had. The question is, would a remake really be necessary? Or would it just frustrate the fans? When we look at the 2011 production, we see that the Madhouse studio did an amazing job with the animation, combat scenes, and faithful adaptation of the work. So the idea of a remake in this case seems somewhat redundant. What might be more interesting would be to continue from where it left off, picking up the arc of the expedition to the Dark Continent and moving the story forward. However, continuing the anime adaptation brings the problem of speed and the regularity of releases. What happens is that with such long breaks in the manga, the adaptation's rhythm would be compromised if there wasn't a constant flow of new chapters. This would require the studio to be very careful in how it approaches the future of the anime, perhaps distancing itself from some of the limitations of the original material. The risk here would be creating a hype cycle that could be broken if the anime stops again for a long time. The big question is that even with enough material, the uncertain future of the manga puts the studio in a delicate position. If the anime simply continued without a clear plan to cover the most recent chapters, it could weaken the story and the experience that fans love. So, what could be the ideal solution here? I think in a perfect scenario, it would be interesting for the studio to resume production of Hunter x Hunter, but with a more strategic approach, considering that the material is still ongoing, and that Togashi, even though he has shown commitment to the story, still depends on his health to move forward. It wouldn't be easy to adapt what's left, but it wouldn't be impossible either. Perhaps the best approach would be a more cautious one, with adaptations of shorter arcs or episodes dedicated to exploring them more deeply without losing the pace of the original story. Hunters, that was our video for today. Leave a like if you enjoyed our video, subscribe to the channel as it is still very new, and I'll see you in the next video. Until then.